Welcome to Equestrian Adventuresses, the show for women who love horses, travel, and adventure. And in today's episode, I am speaking to Sarah. She's actually a good friend of mine. I actually know her from the Mongol Derby back in 2014. And today she comes on the show. We laugh a lot, and we share some of our stories together in the Derby, but also she shares her amazing horse race adventure she did. It's a bit similar like the Mongol Derby, but it's not. It's in South Africa, and it's pretty intense. So she had to actually swim across rivers with sharks and all kinds of crazy things. So she shares her adventures in South Africa, and she's also a fitness guru for horse riders. So she shares some of her tips about fitness and goal setting, and she's got a lot of really good fun stories, and it was a lot of fun having her on the show. In last week's episode, we actually spoke to Susanna, and she shared with us a lot of her fun and crazy stories about her trips to Kenya. And she actually was an expat growing up, so she actually traveled a lot as a child. So she shared a lot of her, and she went back to Kenya later as an adult. And yeah, so she shared a lot of her adventures, and we had a lot of deep talks, I think, a lot of sisterhood going on. And so, if you haven't listened to her show already, just go to our podcast, make sure you subscribe so you can get notifications every time we release a new podcast, and check out her episode. I also wanted to just quickly mention our YouTube channel. So we have a lot of documentary films that are actually already out there. We filmed last year in Greece and in Greenland and Slovenia and Bhutan and Brazil. So those films are coming out. We already have some that are out, like the Greenland episode in Greece. And Slovenia is going to come out soon. And the Brazil one. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. And then watch our shows and share it with your friends. The more that you share the love, the more that we can help others. And we're sharing these women's stories, and it's just very helpful to keep the sisterhood going and to share their stories. So our YouTube channel, you can find it on our website, equestrianadventuresses.com, or you can just go to YouTube, type Equestrian Adventuresses, and subscribe. So you'll also see some films about my personal trips in Ireland. I actually rode my 2 horses across Ireland, and we filmed the entire journey. And yeah, so we have the first 4 episodes are already up, and we're actually going to release the next episode very soon. So yeah, you're not going to want to miss it. It's actually quite funny, like watching the show now after having done all of those adventures, and I'm just kind of like, woo. So I'm glad that we have the video footage. Otherwise, I think no one would believe me that we actually did that. So yeah, that is all for now, and cue the music. We are explorers. We are trailblazers. We love to do what cannot be done. We love to test our limits, cross borders, and we love the freedom horses bring us. We seek lands without fences. Who are we? We are equestrian adventuresses. We are a community of women who love horses, travel, and adventure.
To infinity and beyond!
And now your host, Crystal Kelly.
Hello, adventuresses, and today I'm talking to Sarah. She's a good friend of mine. She's actually in Canada right now. Well, that's where she's from. And I'm American, so I'm just going to pretend like she's not Canadian. So, hi, Sarah, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Crystal. Good to hear from you.
So, I know you from Mongol Derby. And
Yep.
It's funny because I don't know if you remember this, but you actually saved my life in the Derby because you gave me some oatmeal.
I remember giving it. You know what? I ended up divvying up all my kit, and I ended up feeding a lot of the other riders too. But I remember specifically the oatmeal, and then I remember because I read your article about what to pack for the Mongol Derby. I remember you writing about getting saved by the oatmeal too. I'm like, oh, good. It was.
Yeah, it was worth it. So
I don't think I really had an understanding of how much impact that had until you wrote about it too.
Yeah.
So
well,
was
and
nice.
It's
a nice
one
memory.
of those. It's one of those small things that you wouldn't think about. And I was like, I don't know when it was you gave it to me, like day 7 or something, when I was all miserable,
something like that. Yeah,
and just done with it. And I was like, no more Mongolian soup.
And then I whip out a baggie of oatmeal like it's drugs or something, and you're like, oh, it's like contraband.
So I can personally thank you for my finish across Mongolian Derby.
I'm glad it helped out. I really am.
So your I mean, you're an adventuress. You've done the Derby, and you've done this other race, which we're going to get into. But
Yeah.
before I dive into that, I just want to, for the listeners, just give me a little bit about your background, like where you're from, what got you into these crazy hardcore adventures.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm from Ontario, Canada, and like near Toronto. And I actually wasn't horsey growing up. I wasn't really from a horsey family or anything. But one year, my grandparents always sent me to this, one of those like general activity camps where they'll have, 20, 30 different activities and you'll try each one through the course of 2 weeks or something. I remember, and I don't know if my parents so much knew about it or if it was just kind of something I had on my own, but there was one year where they upped you to 1 month. And one of the activities was horseback riding. So that's where I got my first taste of it. And I remember when it was a 1 month 1 month camp, they actually they came to visit me. They thought I would be homesick, and they came on the single day that I was supposed to horseback ride. So I resented them like hell over that one because I missed the one day I got to ride. And then, needless to say, the next year I ended up going to pony camp instead because I was absolutely hooked. So I did pony camp for a couple of years, and then I kind of did nothing through high school and university and that because horses are expensive and time consuming. But then once I kind of got back, into the workforce and I kind of had a little bit of money to spend, I thought, I'd like to get back into horses. So I started riding a little bit. I part boarded a horse, and my mom's best friend actually had started into something called endurance at the time. I'm like, wait, what's endurance? And I understood, she kind of explained it's kind of like marathon on horseback. You get to ride all day long. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, this sport exists. Have I known about that back in the pony camp? Like, I would never have let down when my parents said no to me getting a horse. So I went almost immediately from nothing into endurance. I haven't really shown anything else other than endurance. But I got into it. My mom's friend, she actually was able to find me horses to ride to give it a tryout before I eventually ended up buying my own horse. An unbroken 3-year-old Trakehner Arrow cross who is full of attitude, and it was probably a really bad idea for such a novice rider to take on that kind of challenge. But we kind of learned it together. We figured it out. And it was just like into the deep end there. So I started with an 11-mile race, and then I think I went up to an 18-mile race. And after a year or two, I think I got up to a 50-mile race. And then as soon as I'd done my 50-mile race, I had heard about this thing called the Mongol Derby. And I just signed up. It just got totally out of control. So that's where we met, was at the Mongol Derby. And as you know, I actually didn't finish the Mongol Derby. I withdrew quite early into the race. I had some equipment failure where I believed that it wasn't going to be safe for me to continue anymore. So I respectfully withdrew, keeping my body all in one piece so I could come back and do other things at another time. And as we mentioned before, I divvied up my pack among all the riders, and I took a lot of joy in being kind of behind the scenes and seeing how everybody did everything, and helping them get through there too. So that actually became like a real highlight of my journey there. And then after that, like, I just made friends with all of you guys, and ever since, we've been kind of meeting up every year or so, doing kind of big either vacations or races. And then I still do endurance here in Ontario too. I'm now up to 2 horses. And I even have a couple of students that come out and do it with me too. So as I said, I started out small and then I went right into the deep end, and I would never go back. It's just the absolute favorite sport for me.
And it's kind of funny because, so I wasn't an endurance rider, and I remember I was at the Derby and I was like talking to all these endurance riders like you and a few others, and I was like, oh my God, what have I signed up for? But I just, like, I have body pains. Like, I've been working with horses my whole life. I have back problems or this or that or whatever, and the Derby really brings it out, I think, when you're riding all day long. So, what's your, I don't know, what is it about endurance that you're like so addicted to it?
I think I like the I think I like the responsibility, honestly. I like being responsible for the care of my horse. I like the pride of bringing in a horse that's fit to continue. I like that it forces me to learn so much about the horse's care. And it's not just getting on and riding. It's everything associated with bringing out the best athlete in your horse and yourself too. And it's just you don't spend $500 to go around the ring for 3 minutes. You get to go out there all day round too, right? Yeah. And I'm like, seriously, like, I know I spend a lot of money on these big adventures and stuff, but I'm really cheap that way. So I like to get a lot of bang for my buck, and that's why I like all these big ultra rides, I think.
Yeah, if you're gonna ride in Mongolia, might as well be 1,000 K.
Yeah, exactly. You get your money's worth, especially when you come in later in the field too, right?
That's what I did. Yeah, I rode it out as long as I could.
I paid for 10 days of riding. I'm going to get it.
Exactly. That's what I did. I stopped at every single Zoom just for a bottle of Coca-Cola. And then I would look at my GPS and I'm like, it's a 7-kilometer detour. Like, let's do it.
It's funny because sometimes I can be so competitive and I really want to win, or I really want to, beat my personal record or something like that. And then other times I could care absolutely less. So I'm just like, let's just go toddle around and let's go see things and let's go, and it's kind of, I don't know, whatever mood I'm in, I suppose. Yeah. But I get a little bit of both, and I quite enjoy doing both adventures and races as well. So I try to kind of keep it balanced between the two of those.
Yeah, and so this was 2014 that we did the Derby, and since then you've done quite a few adventures, actually.
So we did Iceland in 2015, and then Race to the Wild Coast, which is what I think we're going to get into in 2016.
Yeah.
2017, I went out to British Columbia within Canada here. 2018, we went to France. 2019, I went back to Mongolia. We rode reindeer with Eric. And then we'll have another one coming up in 2020. Yeah. Which you already know about. And we can announce it now, or we can announce it at the end of the episode?
No, you can go ahead and announce it. Yeah, I'm excited about this one.
I'm really excited for it. So I heard about the Marcia through your website. As you remember, but the listeners won't know. As soon as I heard about it, I'm like, Crystal, I want in. But there's kind of a catch. Because right now I'm actually sitting with my leg elevated because I just had ankle surgery about a week and a half ago. So it's going to be a fun challenge, but I absolutely believe that I will be getting there and ready for it. And I'm very excited to do the Marcia in Brazil with you guys in 2020.
Yeah, and the Marcia, we have a previous episode, if you guys haven't already listened, where Adriana actually explains the Marcia much better, but it's basically 750 kilometers. It's an endurance race, like it's a proper race against gauchos and everything. So yeah, if anyone can handle it, it's you.
Yeah. So. I've got 4.5 months to get back on my feet and back in training. So that's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure to, blog lots about my training as well too, as to see how it goes, right?
Right, yeah. Well, I see your fitness videos all the time. So, yeah, let's actually, I wanted to bring that up as well, because you're kind of an equestrian fitness guru, I guess.
I wouldn't say guru just yet. I'm trying to be. It's just something I've kind of taken an interest in since the Derby, as you know, like the Derby takes a lot of fitness and training as well. So that was kind of when I started my fitness journey. And then after that, I've gone up and down, as you typically do with these adventure races, and as an equestrian too, because you get injuries and sidetracked and things like that. But I really, really enjoyed actually the training process and learning about my body through fitness outside of the saddle as well as inside of the saddle. So right now I'm working on my personal trainer certification. And I'm hoping that I will have that before I see you guys in the Marcia. But it's kind of, there's exams and stuff to do. So I'm working on the course for that. And I've been doing a lot of videos and helping a lot of people out just to get fit both for things like balance and strength in the saddle, but also for the endurance. For if you're trying to go to something, doesn't necessarily have to be like the Mongol Derby or the Marcha, but it could be, just that you want to feel better after a nice long trail ride, or maybe you want to go on a vacation and do multi-days and stuff like that. So I've been kind of, while I'm doing my training, I've also been developing a program specifically for equestrians who want to kind of check these things off their bucket list, who want to go for long rides, who want to feel better, and who want to ride the best for their horses to keep their horses going for longer too. So yeah, I'll be doing a lot more content, a lot more videos and that too coming out. And I guess we'll share all my information at the end and in the show notes too, right? So
yes, definitely.
you guys will definitely be able to follow along as I share some videos. And the first ones are going to be really interesting too, because I've been coming in on my crutches and showing all the things that you can do still, no matter what your injury is too. As I'm a big believer in looking at what you can do versus what you can't do, and shifting your focus for that. So. Ever the optimist.
Yes, and I think that's an important thing to say, actually, because a lot of people focus on the, oh, I'm not flexible enough, or oh, I can't do this, or oh, I can't that. And yeah, it's about what you can do and just amplifying that. So I really like what you said there. Do you have some maybe advice, or like you said, not necessarily that they have to go and do the Derby or something, but what's some sort of advice that you could give for somebody as far as what they can do to focus on their fitness to, I don't know, increase their horse riding capabilities?
The very bare minimum that I would say is to do a lot of core work. Everything kind of comes out of your core with riding, right? If you see lots of videos and you see riders who don't have legs or don't have arms, and they're still like riding these beautiful dressage tests, and you're like, wow, I could never do that. Like, they ride better dressage tests than I can. But it's all because of they have a strong and supple core, right? They're able to move with their horse and make adjustments through the hips too, right? So focusing on core strength is going to be really beneficial for any rider, no matter what discipline you are. And then if you're looking at doing some distances and that too, I personally like running. You could really do any sort of cardio that you want, but don't count out cardio. I know a lot of us ride because we don't like to run or cycle or anything like that. But to be able to get fit outside of the horse, so your horse doesn't have to bear that burden while you catch up to him, I think that's really important to do as well. Because your horse isn't a piece of gym equipment, and that's kind of something that I try to bring along to people. A lot of people like to focus on legs, which is good too, but it's something that I think we kind of already do a lot of in the equestrian world. So I actually focus more as I said, the core and the upper body. The upper body is actually important too, because it's more about being able to keep those shoulders back, give your half halts, and be able to control the horse's movement and control yourself too, so you don't get into that hunched over position. So having a strong and open upper body is something that we don't think of. We don't think we need big muscles in the top, and we don't need big muscles, but we do need to be effective too. So yeah, it's really, if you could find any sort of program that, as long as it's one that you enjoy and that you'll stick with it, and it focuses on full body, I think you can't really go wrong.
Perfect. Yeah, I follow a lot in your Facebook group that you have, and it's definitely, I saw you coming in on the crutches and everything, and I'm like, my goodness, she's making me feel like crap right now.
It's supposed to be inspiring, not
well, I'm just telling
the
you,
other way around.
You're just making people sitting on their sofas like I am. Like, oh. No, it's great. I actually really love it, and it actually does motivate me to actually start doing more than what I'm doing, because like you said, it's not just, the horses are not just the machine that should do all of the work for us. Like, we actually need to be athletes as well.
And a lot of what I like to preach too is that there's always that joke around where people, they like to say, oh, my horse gets shoes every 6 weeks, and it has a chiropractor and a dentist and a massage therapist and blah 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 blah. And I'm wearing 4-year-old sneakers and eating ramen noodles and stuff like that too, right?
Right.
And it's funny, it's cute, it is kind of the way that we end up operating. But it's not necessarily the way we should be operating. I want riders to remember that they need to take care of themselves as well as they take care of their horses, and that they deserve to be treated as well as they treat their horses. So it's something that I do a lot of. I go to massage, I go to physiotherapy. I try to eat well, but I'm still working on that one. But yeah, it's just something that I kind of want to drill into the riders that I work with, is that by having a healthy lifestyle yourself and taking care of yourself, you can be a better rider and a better caregiver to your horse too. So yeah, just to respect yourself and enjoy it too, right?
Yes.
Treat yourself like an athlete.
Definitely. No, I agree completely. So let's get into some of your adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had missed the Iceland adventure, and I remember when you guys were going, and it looked really, really amazing. But I had other things at the time. So how was that Iceland trip?
Oh, it was nice. It was just one of those, the Derby's so intense. It was so nice to kind of go riding and have no expectations of you, right? You didn't have to navigate. You didn't have to know where you are. You just had to get on the horse and follow the leader. And at the end of the night, you slept in a warm bed, and then there was the hot springs and pools and stuff like that. We got to go ride on the beach and swim the horses on the black beaches, and it was just it was so lovely. And all of us kind of looked at each other like, I don't know if I want to do the Derby again. It was like this. So this is what vacation's like. Like, this is what real people do on vacation. But it was really nice. I think we still did 300 or 400 kilometers in a 6-day span, right? Like, we covered a lot of ground. But to have that pressure taken off of us, it was really, really nice. And you can't beat. It's so beautiful there too. There's all sorts of different terrain. And the Icelandic horses are so much fun in the Tolt.
Yeah, I actually just experienced that for the first time last year in Greenland, and I was laughing the whole time.
Oh, yeah. The moment we set off at this raging Tolt, we were all just I'm surprised we stayed on the horses. We were laughing so hard. We were crippled with laughter. It was just so much fun.
And all of the mane flying into your face, basically.
Yes. Oh man, they are so furry. I love it.
Yeah. So it's funny that you just said, oh, this is what an actual horse vacation sounds like, and then you sign up for this South African race.
Yeah, and I think that was something that we all kind of agreed upon when we were sitting in Iceland. We're because you're in one and you're already planning the next one, right?
Yeah.
So everybody was all talking about this race in South Africa. And I was like, yeah, no doubt in my mind, I want to do this. I had actually worked in South Africa when I was in college, in the same place. I worked near East London, which is about where where the race finishes. And I went, and I always said that I wanted to come back. And when they announced this race with horses and on the wild coast, this place that I remembered so clearly from college, I'm just there's no better way than to do it, to come back with this race. So I basically said, yep, no, I'm coming. What do you need from me? How can I convince you to let me be part of this race? And then, long story short, they let me in.
And for the people that don't really know about this race, could you just give a little bit of info? How many days is this? How many miles is it? What is this race?
So this race is a multi-stage, multi-day race in South Africa. It's similar in premise to the Mongol Derby, but also very, very different. It is about 350 kilometers long, and it goes from near Durban to near East London, along the the east coast of South Africa. So it's a lot of beaches, but it's also a lot of cliffs. It's a lot of tropical kind of forest. And the thing that makes this very different from the Derby, other than a very different terrain, is instead of having one horse every, what was it in the Derby, about 25 miles, every about 40K or so, we had 3 horses for the entire 350-kilometer race. So it was a lot of horse management. You couldn't get away with having a bad horse on this one. There was a lot more that was dependent on the horse because you only had 3 of them to split among. So you had to make sure that you took extra good care of the horse because you couldn't risk it going lame or having a metabolic issue even more, because it wasn't just a time penalty. It would actually take you right out of the race if it was in the wrong place, right? So yeah, it was a lot of horsemanship required for this race. And another thing that was very different too is there were something like 16 or 17 river crossings, and we had to swim several of them. So this was a first time for me. I don't like swimming. I don't like to get my face wet. I never have liked to get my face wet. So the swimming was kind of a bit of a challenge for me. But we learned, and swimming with horses, well, everything's better with horses. So it's like I learned to love it, you know?
And when you say swimming, you mean like you're next to the horse, hanging on to the horse?
Yeah, so it's not like, you see on Instagram and there's people who are sitting on top of their horses when they're swimming. You can't do that when you're actually going from point to point. You have to be very conservative with your horse's energy. And it takes a lot of energy for the horse to swim. So you actually get off when you feel the horse's feet come off the bottom of the ground, because you can actually feel when they become buoyant, and you kind of just slide off and the horse will pull you along mostly. You kind of just have to stay out of its way and steer while you're guiding it across the river. And some of the rivers, I think the farthest one was like a 50-meter swim across. So it was pretty substantial. And it's very, very draggy too, because they're right by where the ocean is. So you got the ocean current coming in. And we always had to be aware of the tides as well, because you didn't want to swim a river going on the outgoing tide, because you could end up washed out into the ocean with the sharks and all of that. So
that sounds a little bit intense.
It is a little bit intense. Yeah, they had to be very particular with the timing too. The crew was absolutely fantastic. If you got to a certain point and you weren't able to make it to the river, because they knew where the river crossings would be, right? So if they knew that there was no possible way for you to make it in time for the tide, they would hold you there too. So it was a absolutely huge logistical feat for them to be able to do this, and manage all of us through this.
And how was it with the currents? Because I think that would be my fear, because I'm not a strong swimmer myself, and like you, my head never goes underwater. Ever.
No, I don't think I would want to put my head under the water either. We're near the horse's legs too, right?
Yeah.
So I think the visual is probably.
So you have the horse's legs kicking next to you. You have the possibility of being swept into the current with sharks.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty strong. Katya, she was a surfer, and she always I wasn't riding with her for most of it, but she was always talking about how she could see the current and where it was pooling and stuff, and she had very strategic swims. I'm like, I held on to my horse, and my horse was very strong, and I pointed at where I wanted to go.
Wow.
I was very simple about it. I was lucky. I had some strong swimming horses at the beginning, while I kind of figured it out. We did get to practice a little bit, but where we were practicing, there wasn't much of a current. It was kind of more just to get a feel of getting in and out of the saddle in the water. But yeah, there wasn't really a current there. So yeah, you kind of had to, you'd have to swim diagonally, right? Because you would pick your point, because it's very rocky on either side. And you could either see where the beach would go, or they would actually set a marker out for us to say where it was safe to take the horses out of the water. Because if you got out of the water at the wrong point, you could risk injuring your horse's legs, right? If they try to jump up on the rocks out of the water. So they would generally put a marker as to where it was safe, or they would have a crew member there kind of directing us. And and you would kind of point for it. You'd try to angle it, and you'd swim like a little bit upstream because you kind of have to counteract what it is. And me not knowing anything about currents, as I said, Katya being a surfer, she was like bang on with it. But me not knowing anything about currents, it was kind of just get in and adjust as necessary. There was one really funny incident, actually. When we were swimming the river, I was riding with Monday a lot. He did the Mongol Derby. I think was it the year before us or 2 years before us? I was riding with him for most of the race, and I remember trying to hold my horse to stay out of the water, and my horse was like really, really keen. He was a leader horse. He always wanted to be in first, but Monday just kind of went in. And I didn't want to be close to him. I didn't want, the horse in front of me's legs anywhere near me. So I'm trying to wait. I'm holding onto my horse. I'm holding on my horse. I'm holding on my horse. My horse is popping up and down on the beach. Finally, I let him in, and he starts swimming. He's chugging along. And then up front of me, Monty starts like swimming around in circles. And I'm like, what's going on? And, like, I'm trying to get out of his way. And like, no, we're going to crash. We're going to crash. And then I see him grabbing at something. I said, Monty, what happened? He said, I lost a shoe. Monty had lost his shoe, not the horse's shoe, his shoe while swimming. And he's swimming around in circles trying to catch his shoe. It's just floating in the river. So, yeah, it was just like kind of one of those things. It's just you kind of you get in and things happen and you kind of have to adjust. You do the best you can, but things change halfway too, right? You always have to be kind of a little flexible with the plan and have a lot of backups as well, especially if somebody's going to lose a ship.
Right.
He didn't do it a second time though. He tied his shoes much tighter afterwards.
Yeah, that would have been a very interesting race for him.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
And so, you're crossing these rivers and you're having this adventure. Do you have a moment where you're just like, why did I sign up for this? Like, what was I thinking?
Absolutely, all the time. You probably went through the same thing with the Derby too. It's just like, you're super high on life one minute, and then the next minute you're just like, oh God, like why? Why did I think this would be a good idea? And it's like, this is where I'm going to die, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't think of any one particular one because I was just in and out of it quite a lot. There was I think the worst I probably felt was on day two. On day two, so when you're getting in and out of these rivers, whether you're swimming them or not, you're just soaking. You're absolutely soaking. And so every time you get out of a river and you get back in the saddle, like everything's heavy. Your pants and your clothes and all that is heavy, and you kind of get like that saggy diaper butt in your breeches, no matter how tight they are. Like I had compression tights, and they were still like getting saggy butt. For the next 2 miles, you feel your pants slapping your butt every time you're posting trot. And that's bad enough as it is because you start chafing and you're wet all the time and all this. But then with day two, you hang up your pants to try to dry overnight, and you put them on, and they're just like still so damp and cold in the morning, and you're just like, trying to put on the pants. I actually was like grunting and huffing and puffing. And Sam Jones, who won the Derby in our year, she was sharing a tent with me. She just like laughed at me every time because apparently I was very dramatic putting my pants on in the morning. And I guess the with the first morning, the second day of riding there, I was a little careless putting my pants on, and I must have had, I don't know, some sort of sand or something on my feet. So the next couple of legs, I ended up riding with sand in the inside of my legs and my pants, and I sandpapered my legs for about 80 kilometers, probably 7 or 8 hours of riding. Before I had a chance to kind of pull my pants down and check it out and apply a ton of Body Glide and fix it up. But it was really, really painful. Like I had scars on the inside of my legs for probably 6 months afterwards. I couldn't wear shorts or anything. And then, you're getting in and out of the water, and it's salt water, and it just stings every single time. So I think that was probably what caused me to say, why did I do this? Because as I said, it left some nasty scars. It was really painful. And it was a lot of there's a lot of mental work where, afterwards when I had dealt with it, as I said, you get that sting every time you got into the salt water, but you kind of had to have those little mental hurdles of saying, it's not getting worse. I've dealt with it. It's just pain. It's just telling me, pay attention to me. So shut it off and keep going, because it's not enough to make you stop doing this race. And so you know how it is with the Derby and things like that too. But as I said, every single time you get back into saltwater, it's a little reminder of like, why am I doing this again? Why?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially non-horse people just don't get it, I think. But horsey people, we get injured, I think, we fall off, we get back on. So we already have a sort of high resilience to pain.
Yeah.
But I do think that for me, part of the draw had been doing the Derby was the fact that it is a challenge and that I'm pushing myself and sort of seeing what I'm made of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, what are you made of, Crystal? What can you tolerate? What can you deal with? And, when I walked away from that, everything after that is just like, well, I know what I'm made of. I can handle that, So is it kind of similar for you?
Yeah, I got a lot of that with Race the Wild Coast because, as I said, I did pull out of the Derby rather early because because I had the equipment malfunction, and it wasn't that I wanted to. It was probably one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make, was pulling out of the Derby. But I had broken my tailbone about 6 weeks before the start of the Derby, so riding without stirrups wasn't an option for me. And the stirrups that I did have, they were causing injury to my ankle as well. And what happened was I kept dropping them every like minute or so. And the horse I was on was really good, but as you know, with Derby horses, you can't drop your stirrups on every single horse. So you'll end up down in the dirt, right? And to me, at that point, I said, this is a legitimate safety concern for me. I understand accidents happen, and I'm okay with that going into the Derby. But I feel like if I go in this state, it's no longer an accident, because I feel like I should know better. And I don't think I could live with knowing that if something had happened. So I was always I was quite pleased with, like, I was fine with that, leaving the Derby. But then, things, you start to mellow on things, right? And people, you come home and they don't understand. They don't know how you were feeling in that situation. They don't know what it's like to be out there. And then you start to second guess yourself too, right? And I said, am I as tough as I thought I was? I had a lot of difficulty after the Mongol Derby just riding my own horse. Like, I was scared shitless for like a lot of just like little stupid things, like put a little cross rail in front of me and I'm like, I can't jump that. It's too big, And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, I thought I was better than this. And you really get in your head that way. So I think going to Race the Wild Coast, it was scary. It was intimidating, but it was a way for me to kind of prove to myself as well. And I wasn't trying to think about that going in too, because putting so much pressure on yourself to prove this is in of itself, it's going to be, make it more difficult for you to make such a big deal out of it, right? But at the same time too, as you said, little things like, the, having bloody legs for 4 days and stuff like that, there's almost a little bit more incentive for me to say, okay, I'm still trying to prove this to myself. So like, what am I going to do now? And said, is this what's going to stop me? No, I can't let this do this again, And after Wild Coast, things changed quite a lot for me. My confidence definitely grew after that. So I definitely needed it, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without the various small challenges that happened along the way within this race too.
Well, and so I'll go ahead and mention sort of spoiler, because I saw the film and you did quite well. I mean, you finished in the top 3 and you were in the front pack basically the entire competition. So do you want to just kind of dive in a little bit about what people see in the film and the fact that you did do so well?
So this is kind of a funny story. I don't know if Barry and Joe, the organizers, really knew this. But I think because I didn't finish the Derby, I think people didn't really expect much out of me, which was like such a relief, actually, because like nobody really knows about me. Nobody really cares. Nobody's paying attention. And I very distinctly remember at the very beginning of the race, that I was watching people talking to the film crew, and they'd be talking to the film crew before, like while they're trying to cool down their horses and things like that. And it's slowing them down, right? So I'm like, it's okay. The film crew, like, they don't really care about me. They don't think anything of me. I'm just trying to get through it. I'm going to cool off my horse, and I'm going to make a very efficient vet check, because I want to be, really efficient in my vet checks and do some really nice vet checks. And then, I'm not going to waste any time, because I really didn't want to waste any time. And even when I could see they'd start like coming towards me, I'd make myself look very, very busy so that they wouldn't come and talk to me. And I think because I had these very fast vet checks, I was able to kind of take advantage of that. And I gained, minute by minute through the vet checks. When you're doing a race like this, the horses, they all want to be together, and they perform better when they're together. So it's very hard to lose riders on trail. If you want to take a lead, doing it on trail is not really the place that you can do it. It's doing it through the vet checks, and it's doing it through the horse changes. That's where kind of the beauty happens. So if you can be fast in the vet checks and the horse changes, that's where you start to get ahead. And that's how I started to get ahead, was because I was, as I said, I wasn't letting anything distract me through there. And because I think they didn't really expect much of me anyway, they probably didn't care as much to seek me out until later in the race. So if you're watching the movie, you'll notice there's almost no like footage of me at the beginning, but then they start getting more interviews with me later on in the race, kind of once I settle in and I have the process down a little bit better too. So that was kind of my little sneaky trick. And if anybody is training for it this year, you can think about that if you're trying to be competitive with it as well.
Yeah, great. And so in the film, I mean, they did a good job of showing how beautiful the coast is. But what are we sort of not seeing in the film, let's say?
So something we're not seeing is it is quite serious. It seems very, very competitive, and I like to think that it wasn't quite as competitive as it seems in the movie. We were all just like a whole bunch of friends out there having a really, really good time. You'd get into the camps at the end of the race day, and would just be absolutely crazy. The riders, we're just laughing all the time. We're having, we're just having a really good time. So all these kind of funny little quirky things. The rider relationships, you don't see much of that. So I think that's one thing, if you're a little intimidated about doing a race like this because you think it's really competitive and that's not you, it doesn't have to be either, right? Like there's a lot, as I said, we're all kind of going through the same sufferings. So there's a lot of bonding between the riders that you just don't get to see in the film, and it's they're limited in what they can show, right? So there's that. The other thing that you don't really see is the relationships that we start to build with the horses too, right? We only have 3 different horses, so each horse does 100 to 120 or so kilometers. We met our horses in the pre-race training. We got to train with them each for maybe about an hour to 2 hours, depending on which horse it was. And that's all we really got to know with them in the beginning. We had to select which horse we wanted for which stage based on what they told us about it and what they told us about the terrain and the course for that section as well. So there's a lot of like, I don't know what we're doing here. But then you get on the horse and you start this race and you kind of just figure it out along the way. You have a day and a half with each horse to really get to know each other. And they're all so unique. And the horses, they're a mixture. Some of them are Arabians and some of them are Boerput, which I'm sure I absolutely butchered saying. But it's a South African breed of horse. And they're really, really cool because, they're built for the terrain there. We like to say it was like rock climbing on horses. Like there was actually points where it was like climbing up a cliff, and the horse, you look at the horse, you're like, I don't know how you're going to do this. And then they just went right up. It was absolutely unbelievable. I said, my horse wouldn't be able to do this. But you just hold on and trust this horse that you've only known for like an hour to get you up this cliff or swim you across a river or something. And there's something kind of magic about that, It's like, I don't know you, you don't know me, but like, let's make the best of this together.
Wow. This really doesn't sound like my event, heights and swimming.
You know what? And the funny thing too is, so you probably noticed there's this one moment that I really, really remember with the film crew, right? Riding with the film crew was quite different because we actually had a helicopter filming us, and we had a drone filming us too, right?
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of like the Hunger Games or something while you're out there too, right? Because you're riding along, everything's all good, and then you hear the sound of the helicopter coming, and you're like, oh no, the helicopter's here. That means something is ahead, right? Like, there was something ahead. Like,
something worth filming.
What is the next challenge, right? So then you kind of start to get like anxiety and stuff like that, because you're just like, oh no, like this has already been absolutely crazy. Like there were some absolutely crazy terrain challenges we had to do. Like, what more could possibly be thrown at us at this point in time? And I remember there was one point where we were literally riding on the edge of a cliff, and it's a single track trail. Like, it is maybe about 1.5 feet wide. And we're actually trotting along the side of this, and like the hill, it's kind of like the grassy cliffs, like where they're grassy cliffs going straight up to your right and then straight down to your left. It's just like straight cliff down, and probably I don't know, 20 stories high, straight down into the crashing waves, and like absolutely, like you're literally on the edge of this cliff. And I'm in front and Monty's behind me, and I know he told me afterwards that he was like basically losing himself over it, because he could see like my horse's foot going out over the edge of the cliff as we're trotting along, because the horse had a bit of a swing, But I'm happily oblivious up in the front. I'm like, phew, the horse is doing good on the edge of this cliff. And then you hear the helicopter coming around the side of this cliff, right? And you're just thinking, don't spook, don't spook, don't spook, don't spook. Right. Thankfully, by that point in the race, the horses had seen it enough times, and I was on my strongest, bravest horse that time too. So he couldn't care less about the helicopter, but you kind of just have that in the back of your mind. It's like, yeah, one bad step and like you're dead. Like you're literally dead. And then the helicopter comes and just adds that added anxiety on it. And, well, at least it'll get me death on film. Like it'll get really good ratings or something. Like everyone will be talking about this. But no, thankfully nothing happened like that.
Oh goodness.
So but it was just kind of one of those wild things. I'm not particularly afraid of heights, but there were kind of moments where you're just like, I'm just trying to not think about what happens here. So and add the helicopter into the mix. It's a whole new game.
Right. And so how many hours are you spending in the saddle?
Each day we were doing, I think it was about 12. Yeah, it would be about 12 hours each day. I finished on day 4 in the lead, but we had up to 5 days to finish it. And it was different than the Derby in the sense that there was mandatory endpoints. So you would ride, as I said, about your 12 hours. You would have veterinary holds in the middle, so that the horse would have a chance to eat, drink, relax. You could do any work on the horse that you needed to, like if it needed some massage or stretching or stuff like that too. So you would have some mandatory time in the middle, like you would with a standard endurance ride. And then at the end of the day, there was a mandatory endpoint because one, with the rivers, as I already mentioned, and two, it's not like in the Derby where you can kind of just show up to anybody's home and they'll let you in. There is concern about rider safety, especially being a woman in South Africa too. You're not just going to knock on any door that you come across. So they made sure that they had safe places for us to end each day. So most people made it to the end each day. And then what they would do is they would record your time in, and then your time in would be your time out the next day. So because I was always in the lead, I was coming in at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And then I'd have to wake up and be out riding again 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. It was not great for my sleeping pattern. That's for sure.
And I can imagine, I mean, like you said, the terrain sounds a bit sketchy and you're heading out in the dark.
Yeah. Thankfully, we kind of ended up sort of pairing off. I ended up riding with Monday and Sam most of the time. So it's definitely a lot easier when you can tackle it together. There's a lot of times too where, would be a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes apart. And just for the sake, because I think we all enjoy riding an efficient race. None of us were particularly trying to leave each other in the dust or anything. But, if I were 2 minutes ahead of Sam, I'd say, okay, Sam, like I'll see you, in 10 minutes or however long it takes you to, catch up to that lead of mine too. Right. And so it was kind of nice to have that partnership to work with too, as you're riding in the dark. I do remember one day there was a river crossing we were concerned about hitting in the dark, and I think they had said something like, "Oh, we'll put a lantern for you there to aim at." I said, "I'm not swimming this river in the dark. Are you kidding me? Even if there's a lantern for me to aim at." I can't remember what we ended up doing. I think I think they realized that was probably a bad idea. And I think they let us out a little bit later and maybe staggered it afterwards too. But yeah, getting up and starting in the dark. It was not easy. It was generally slow starts in the morning, just to be safe, because you can't risk any mistakes, because if you lose one horse in the race, you're out of it completely, pretty much.
And I mean, 4 days, 12 hours in the saddle. You got to be tired. You got to be getting sore. You're getting close to the finish. Are you just wanting it to end? Are you still kind of enjoying it? Or
you know what? It was kind of a mix of things. As I said, day 2 was definitely the hardest for me because that's when I had the sand in my pants. But then, day 3 and day 4 was getting better. The worst part was probably for exhaustion wise, it was probably for me, on day 4. And, this will be like a little bit of a spoiler alert for the movie. So you saw when I had a 30-minute or so lead.
Yeah.
And my horse, he was very, very green and he did not want to move. Like he did, I call it the sewing machine trot. You know what I'm talking about? The sewing machine trot. And he's just like head in the air and he's looking around and he's screaming for his friends. And so we did that for, I don't know, almost a few hours, I think, before Sam and Monday caught up with me again. But I'm riding along this kind of endless beach and it should be beautiful. I should be super happy. It should be enjoyable, but it's hot on the beach and my horse is just like, I'm having to kick him every single stride and he just won't go forward and he's unhappy and it makes me unhappy. And like, I just kind of started breaking down and I just bawled. And it wasn't even because I was tired or sore or because I wasn't worried about losing the race or anything. The part that like got me going was that I was afraid that I was going to finish the race, that I was going to win the race, having had to ride the horse in such a miserable state for the rest, like the last day. And that was going to be how I would remember the race. I was worried that it would kind of overshadow all the good things that happened during the race. And that's when I'm just like, the throat closes up and it's just like, you know what? Just going to cry and I'm going to let it all out. And then the helicopter came by and I'm like, wipe the tears off. Look
pretty for the cameras.
And it was funny because it's like, okay, the helicopter's here. And like, as soon as I heard the helicopter, I'm like, that means that Sam and Mondi are close. And I turned around and I look and I'm like, there they are. And like, they came, galloping up behind me, and Sam gave me a big hug. And like, I tried to kind of explain why, like, I had tears all over my face and that too. And, but, they understood in that too. But, and I ended up having a lovely ride afterwards. And, I didn't have that sour taste in my mouth that I was worried I was going to have from just having to deal with the unhappy horse for the last leg of the ride. So yeah, that was probably like the worst moment for when it comes to the exhaustion and the delirium and kind of just everything adding up all at one point.
And so, you mentioned that you had kind of a young horse. So did you, how was the horse selection, and did you have some kind of strategy at the beginning, or, how did that work out?
So for us, the horse selection, it was random. We just we drew a number out of a hat, and they tried to make relatively even teams of horses. So you drew an entire full team of horses, and then you got to meet them. So I had three horses, and we got to talk to the somebody who worked for the stud and who knew the horses, and they would tell us a bit about the horses, and they would tell us what they thought the order should be, because they knew best. They knew the horses, and they knew the terrain we were about to handle too, right? So I just took their recommendation. I'm not sure. I think some people may have switched theirs around. But the way it was described to me, so my first horse, and it was totally the case too, is my first horse was a very steady Eddie. He didn't like water, actually. He rode like a banana down the beach because he was just like oogling the waves the whole time. But he was very brave with everything else too. And there was some very tricky terrain on the first day. There was what was called the stone steps, which was basically like 3-foot verticals back to back to back to back going down a cliff. So he was just like so calm and casual through it. Like he just stepped down it like it was nothing. It was absolutely quite unbelievable, actually. So they thought he would be really good for the first day because he would be a confidence builder for me, which he totally was. Then my second horse, Ramcat, they thought he would be best for a lot of cliff climbing, because so the second stage was a lot of up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. So that's why we picked Ramcat for the second stage. And then the last horse, he was younger, but he was an Arab, and he was more like a traditional endurance breeding. And in the last stage, it's longer, but it's also gets a lot flatter. So they felt that he would be better suited towards the end, because he would be able to, he would have the endurance more than the terrain, and he would be able to stretch out and go a little bit faster for a little bit farther. So we went with that. And honestly, like in hindsight, maybe he would have been better somewhere else, but I think he was only 4 or 5. He had only done a couple of 40-kilometer races before. So this like totally blew his mind, the poor thing. He was just very green. He was very herd bound. And, I never would have perceived, what the outcome would be for me in the race too, right? Like you don't know where you're going to be at the end of the race until it actually happens. So the fact that I wasn't able to go out alone without another horse, like it could have been totally irrelevant. If I had to take him as a green horse through those stone steps at the beginning, maybe it would have been helpful, because there were lots of horses around at the beginning before we started to spread out a little bit. But for all I know, he could have, launched himself down the cliff and, taken us out real early too. Right. So, absolutely no regrets doing it the way we did. But I think after that, they did say, okay, let's have the green horses start at the beginning now. And that way they can all, enjoy each other's company before things start to spread out a little bit. So I think they kind of changed that rule now. And the way they do it now is different. So we were the first year that they did this race. And I understand now that the horse selection is more like Mongol Derby, where the people who get into the horse change first get the first pick of the horse, as opposed to training with them all at the beginning. So I think, yeah, they're kind of better able to manage which horses get picked for what themselves that way too. So yeah, and each of the horses, they're still the same horses that they're using. I think there's maybe a few new ones, but each of the horses, my horse, he got, a real crash course into endurance, and he was, quite a lovely horse by the end of it. And from what I understand, he's been a lot better for the riders who have had him ever since too, because each year the horses get a little bit more experienced with the terrain and just the nature of the race too.
And so these kind of trips are, I mean, they're not cheap, to do these kind of adventures. How do you, I don't know, save up for these kind of adventures, or do you just sort of prioritize travel, basically?
Yeah, really, really it is. It's a matter of priorities. I like to believe that if it's something you really want, you're going to make it happen, that you're going to be resourceful and you're going to find a way to make it happen. I have a car my car just rolled over 400,000 kilometers and it's still kicking, thankfully. And I live in a relatively cheap basement apartment. I've got a full-time job. My spouse has a full-time job. We don't have any kids. I do coach riding, and I lease my horses out for endurance riding on the side. And now I'm, going to be doing this personal training as well too. I've done a lot of approaching sponsors, doing various fundraising activities. It's a lot of making it work, cutting back on things that, aren't going to be advantageous to your goal. And having a smart plan and training for it. It's, you train physically, you train mentally, and you train financially for these sort of things. And I think the reason I'm able to do multiple ones of these is because I've done it before. I do it a little better each time. And as I said, I prioritize. So there's lots of things that I choose to live without, so that I can go and continue to do these adventures because it's what I truly love.
Yeah. And what is it again? I mean, yeah, I guess, these kind of adventures, like you said, it's a challenge. It's not necessarily easy, but there's something that's making you go and do this, and not just do it once, but like you're constantly seeking the next one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what exactly you mean when you're asking.
Oh,
so
sorry.
What is it?
Yeah, like sort of what is it that's just making you like, is it, I don't know, that moment where you're on the beach and you're like, oh wow, it's so beautiful, or, like what is it about it that just makes it all worth it?
I think part of it is like a bit of an addiction. So you probably feel the same way. I like to say it is a bit of an addiction, but it's a sense of accomplishment. It's a sense of achievement. Just getting there to the start line is something that 99% of the population don't do. I really enjoy the process. I enjoy training. I love having something to look forward to. When you're done these sort of things, because you've been training for them so long, there's a bit of a letdown as well. So it's kind of, I like having something on my radar all the time. I like having kind of that incentive to get up out of bed and go for a ride, or, go for a run, or lift some weights, or, show up and do a speaking event or something, or do some fundraising in that. It's a motivator for me.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of people, I actually just found out, because I've been doing a lot of courses myself lately, and I just found out like only 1% of people in the US actually write down goals. And I was kind of mind blown by that, because I've always been I'm always a goal oriented person. And I remember when I started traveling and people would message me like, oh, I wish I could travel. I'm like, well, no, because you would be doing it,
Yeah.
So there's a difference. And really, it's kind of like the reason why I'm doing it and they're not is because of I have goals. Like I have a box to cross off. That's literally the only difference.
There's a big difference between wanting to do something and committing to doing something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love what you just said, when you have something to look forward to, you have a reason to like get out of bed and like, I have to go to the gym because I'm training for this, or I'm doing that, or I think that's a great thing to say.
Yeah, and everyone always asks me that, like, how do you get up and every morning and go to the gym and all this? And honestly, I don't always, but if I've got something on my radar, I'm gonna make it happen. Like I probably wouldn't be doing those crutches exercise videos right now if it wasn't that I need to be fit for the marcha in 5 months, right? And I'm not going to be able to go out running now, but what can I do? I can get on my bench. I can lift some weights. I can build my shoulders up so that I can carry extra weight. I can do all that kind of stuff. So there's no reason to wait. There's no reason to put it off. And if my goal is greater than my excuse, it's going to win every time.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Ooh.
let's write that one down and make like a meme or something.
Yeah, exactly. Woo, okay.
That's a shareable.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna put that in the show notes, guys. Sarah's little meme. You're gonna print it and you're gonna put it on your mirror. No, I love that. That's very good. So
Yeah.
Do you have any? Honestly, I could talk to you all night, basically, but I'm gonna have to wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have any last tips or advice for people that are interested in, I don't know, doing what you're doing, basically?
I think something that needs to be said too is if this is something that you want to do, as scary as it sounds, act first and think later. It sounds very irresponsible, but I think it's something that, if there's something that you want to do and you sit and you think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it, you're kind of always going to think about it, and you're never going to get there. If you just go and you sign up, or you just make the call, or just find out more information, get talking to somebody. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be Mongol Derby, Soil Coast, Marcha Big. It could just be, I want to get out to my first endurance ride this year, or I want to, I want to do something. Take that first step. Take the first step, commit to it, write the goal down. As you said, like if only 1% of our population is writing the goal down, they're never going to get there. So write the goal down, share it on social media, make yourself committed to it. And then figure it out along the way. When I signed up for the Mongol Derby, it was definitely the biggest thing that I had ever signed up for, and I didn't know how I was going to get the money to do it. I actually didn't even expect that they were going to accept me. When they did, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to keep applying until I get it. And then they accepted me. I'm like, oh crap! Now I have to go and like figure out how I'm actually going to make this work, right? But I think if you've committed to that, you've committed to the goal, whatever it might be, you are going to be more resourceful in trying to make it work. So as I said, just kind of take that leap of faith. If there's something that you've been kind of holding on to for a little while, tell somebody about it. Make the commitment to doing it. Put down a deposit, whatever it takes to get you moving towards that goal.
Yeah, definitely. And I also, in my own experiences, I've noticed that once I've sort of made that decision or committed, that the how kind of appears,
Yes.
Because I was the same. Like, I don't have that much money to go and travel on these adventures, But somehow, when I just sort of made that commitment, somehow I always found the money or found the resources, or somehow I met the right person, or whatever it was. But I kind of attracted that to me just because I decided, nope, I'm doing it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of people, they want to be safe and that, but you don't really experience the growth unless you take a little bit of a risk there, and if you have to make it happen. So don't be afraid of taking that little bit of risk, no matter what it is. And I think that it'll make you a lot happier in the long run. And you can feel that commitment to it once you've actually, taken that first step. The first step is always the hardest.
Yeah, definitely. So where can people find you and follow you? What's the best way to reach you?
So I've got both Instagram and Facebook, though I do more on, I'd say I do more on Instagram. I'm at Equestrian Cyborg is going to be now for my adventures. It's going to be a lot of my marcha training on there. And if you're interested in the fitness side of it, I've just started up my Ride Like an Athlete. Instagram as well, so you could follow both of those. We also have the Ride Like an Athlete group on Facebook, where I share a lot of fitness tips, but then sometimes we do adventure tips, and it's kind of just an open group for people who want to talk about going after their dreams that are horsey related. Whether it's something big, as I said, like the Mongol Derby, or if it's just, you want to be fitter and healthier. It's a way to connect with some like-minded people and hear about new opportunities and get some nice free advice as well. So yeah, definitely check out the group as well as my 2 Instagram accounts there.
Perfect. And like I said, I'm going to include that in the show notes. And unfortunately, the film, we don't know how we can watch that, do we?
No, I'm not quite sure. I think I'm going to have to reach out to them and see if they're going to be doing anything with that, if they're going to post it somewhere. But hopefully we'll figure something out. I'm now motivated to pester them, and hopefully I can get something for you guys soon. So I'll make sure that whenever something happens, I will post the hell out of it on all my socials, so you guys will know about it.
Yeah. And if I do find something, then I'll include that too.
That sounds great, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun talking to you, as always.
Thanks for letting me chat your ear off.
Well, thank you, and we'll definitely catch up after the Marcha Adventures.
Absolutely.
You have been listening to the Equestrian Adventuresses podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and check out our website, equestrianadventuresses.com, for links to the show notes. Leave us a review and consider becoming a premium member for bonus episodes and footage. More information can be found on our website. Until next time, Adventuresses, happy trails.